You are in the middle of a heated debate. It could be about something significant, like politics or philosophy, but let's be honest, it's probably about something completely absurd. Maybe you are arguing about the exact release date of a movie, or the correct way to load a dishwasher. You are digging your heels in, citing sources, using your best rhetoric. Then, a terrifying thing happens. A tiny, cold realization drips down your spine. You realize, mid-sentence, that you are actually wrong. The facts have aligned against you. Do you stop? Do you gracefully smile and concede? Absolutely not. You double down. You would rather drive the car off the cliff of logic than admit the other person is right in that specific moment. It feels physical, doesn't it? Like your throat is closing up with cement. People call this being difficult. Your friends might call it being stubborn as a mule. Your ex probably just called it impossible. But let's pump the brakes. It's not that you have a massive, fragile ego. It's not that you are a narcissist in training. And it certainly isn't because you enjoy conflict. In fact, if you are like most of us, you probably despise conflict and replay these moments with agonizing regret later. The reality is much more visceral than a simple personality flaw. Your brain is actually reacting to the concept of being wrong, the same way a gazelle reacts to the sound of a snapping twig in tall grass. Society loves to preach about humility. They tell you to just let it go, or be the bigger person, as if your refusal to concede is a moral failing or a sign of immaturity. They see someone who loves the sound of their own voice. I see a high-performance machine protecting its core operating system from a perceived virus. Here is the uncomfortable truth. You have been gaslit into thinking your rigidity is a defect. It's not. It is a biological stress response that you have labeled as arrogance. When you feel that wall go up, that isn't pride. That is panic masquerading as certainty. You are not broken. You are just wired with a security system that takes its job a little too seriously. While everyone else is playing frisbee in the park, your brain is guarding the nuclear codes, convinced that a single error could detonate your entire reality. Let's look under the hood to see why the math just works differently for you. When someone challenges your viewpoint, or when you discover an inconsistency in your own thinking, your brain activates a region called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Think of this part of the brain like the error detection software on a computer. For most people, being wrong is a soft, background notification, a little pop-up that says, "Hey, update required." They click OK and move on. For you, because of your high sensitivity and deep processing capabilities, that light isn't a flicker. It is a blinding, strobing neon sign accompanied by a deafening air raid siren. This error signal immediately triggers the amygdala, the brain's primitive fear center. To your nervous system, the phrase, "actually, you're mistaken," is not intellectual feedback. It is a predator lunging from the bushes. Your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. This is what neuroscientists call a psychological threat response. Your brain literally cannot distinguish between, "I got the capital of Ohio wrong," and "I am about to be eaten by a bear." So, you enter a state of fight or flight. You lock up. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, reason, and saying, "Oh, my bad," goes offline. It's like trying to run a complex spreadsheet while your computer is on fire. You aren't being stubborn, you are surviving. You are trying to keep the software running while the hardware is currently melting down. Wild, right? You literally cannot access the part of your brain responsible for logic because the part responsible for not dying is screaming too loud. But here is the plot twist. This trait, this agonizing difficulty in admitting error, is actually a side effect of a massive superpower. You are an architect of truth. Your mind is built on structural integrity. You don't just have opinions, you build complex, internal maps of how the world works. Every fact, every belief, every piece of data is a load-bearing wall in the fortress of your mind. If someone comes along and says, "That wall is in the wrong place," they aren't just moving a brick, They are threatening to collapse the entire building. Your resistance to being wrong is actually a testament to how deeply you care about accuracy and coherence. In an evolutionary context, you were the tribe member who memorized the migration patterns. If you were wrong, the tribe didn't just get lost. They starved. You held the line on reality. Congratulations, you aren't difficult. You are the sentinel who spots the tiger first. Research into evolutionary psychology suggests that individuals with this kind of intellectual rigidity often possess higher levels of integrity because they view inconsistencies as moral threats. You struggle to say, "I'm wrong," because to you, being wrong feels like lying to the universe. You aren't protecting your ego. You are protecting the validity of your internal map, which is the only thing keeping you oriented in a chaotic world. So where did this come from? Spoiler alert, it's rarely just biology. Usually, this is a pattern recognition adaptation from childhood. Scenario: maybe you grew up in a chaotic environment where the only thing you could control was your intellect. Maybe you were the smart kid or the mature one. That label wasn't just a compliment, it was your permission slip to exist. If you were smart, you were safe. If you were right, you were worthy of love, or at least avoided criticism. Being wrong meant the loss of status, safety, or affection. Your brain became a pattern recognition machine designed to predict outcomes with 100% accuracy to avoid pain. You learned early on that accuracy was your armor. If you knew the answer, you were useful. If you were useful, you were safe. Admitting error now, as an adult, subconsciously triggers that dormant childhood fear of abandonment or uselessness. You learned that you had to be the one who knew the answer because nobody else was driving the bus, and if you fell asleep at the wheel, bad things happened. You aren't arguing about the dishwasher. You are arguing to prove that you are still competent enough to survive. Now, let's talk about the glitchy consequences of this operating system. Because you can't admit you're wrong in the moment, when the cortisol is pumping, you probably engage in some very specific, very ridiculous micro-habits. You will go to the ends of the earth to find a technicality that makes you technically right. You know the move. Well, in this specific context, what I said was valid. You have probably spent 3 hours on Google at 2 a.m., long after the argument ended and the other person is fast asleep, just to find one obscure article from 1998 that validates your point. Not because you want to show them, but because you need to quell the screaming within your own mind. You likely rehearse arguments in the shower, winning debates that happened 6 years ago with the perfect comeback you missed at the time. And when you finally, painfully realize you were actually wrong, you don't just say, "Oops." You enter a shame spiral that lasts 3 to 5 business days. You treat a simple mistake like a crime scene, analyzing every piece of evidence to figure out how your brain betrayed you. You hold yourself to a standard of perfection that you would never demand from another human being. Here is your permission slip. You are allowed to be wrong without your entire identity disintegrating. You don't have to admit it instantly. It is okay to say, "I need a minute to process that." Give your amygdala time to realize there is no tiger. You aren't stubborn, you just have a high-definition requirement for truth. You're not broken, you're just built different. The world needs people who care this much about getting it right, even if it makes you a little intense at dinner parties. You are the reason bridges don't fall down and facts still matter. If this video just explained your entire internal monologue, don't scroll. The next video explains why you absorb other people's emotions like a sponge.